Okay, welcome to the trigonometry review video. You do not have any notes in your packet on this. Feel free to just watch the video. You don't have to take notes unless you want to. This is a review of what we did in Chapter 7 with SOHCAHTOA. So this is something that you've already learned, but because we're using it again this chapter, we're going to review it. Again, you don't have notes. If you would like to take them, go for it. If you don't want to, just watch the video. So hopefully we remember that SO stands for sine, the CA stands for cosine, and the TOA stands for tangent. The O is opposite, the H is hypotenuse, and the A is adjacent. So I thought that we would just do some examples. Looking at example number 1, you're going to have to find x and y. So at the top I'm going to write SOHCAHTOA. Okay, looking at the 23, the y is opposite, crossing the right angle. The x is hypotenuse, which means the 5 is adjacent. Now I'm going to have to set up a ratio to find x, and I'm going to have to set up a ratio to find y. Starting with x. If I'm starting with x, I'm going to ignore y. I'm going to use the side that I know and the side that I'm looking for. Now a and h is going to be cosine. Remember that you always take the sine, cosine, and tangent of an angle. So I have the cosine of 23 equals, based on my CA, adjacent goes in the numerator, so that's going to be 5 over hypotenuse, which is x. Remember, cosine of 23 is a number, so we put it over 1, and we do cross products. 5 multiplied by 1 is 5, and then I have x times the cosine of 23. Now I'm going to divide both sides by the cosine of 23. X then is going to be 5 divided by the cosine of 23. Now remember in your calculator, in order to do trig, you have to be in degree mode. So just to make sure we're all in degree mode, hit mode and make sure that degree is highlighted. It should be the third row down. If radian is highlighted, you're going to get the wrong answer. Then you're going to do 5 divided by cosine of 23 and make sure you end your parentheses around the 23. When you do that, you get x to be 5.43. And I'm going to put that on my figure. Now we need to set up a ratio for y. In this case, we're going to use the side we were given, the 5, and the one we're looking for. Remember that you don't want to find x, because if you found x wrong, you're going to then find y wrong. So looking at what we have O and A, which is going to be tangent. So we have the tangent of an angle, the tangent of 23, equals opposite, which is y, over adjacent, which is 5. Again, do our cross products. So I have y equals 5 multiplied by the tangent of 23. So 5 times tangent of 23 in your calculator, you get y to be 2.12. You know that I always like to check to make sure my answer makes sense. In this case, the hypotenuse is the longest side, which is what it should be. So we have a few more examples we're going to do together, and then you're going to do a few on your own. Looking at example number 2, same thing, find x and y. So x in this case is opposite. It's opposite of the 35. Y in this case is the hypotenuse, which means 13 is the adjacent. Okay, starting with finding x, I'm going to use the side I know and the side I want to know. So O and A, TOA, that's going to be tangent. So I have the tangent of 35 equals opposite, which is x, over adjacent, which is 13. Put this over 1 and do cross products. I get x equals 13 times the tangent of 35. Please remember that you don't want to multiply the 13 and the 35. Tangent of 35 is a separate entity from the 13. In my calculator, when I do 13 times tangent of 35, I get x to be 9.10. And now I need to find y. Again, I'm going to use the side I was given and then the side I'm looking for. If you use the x and you found x wrong, you're then going to find y wrong. So always make sure you use the side that you were given. Now, this is A and H, which is going to be cosine. So I have the cosine of 35 equals adjacent, which is 13, over hypotenuse, which is y. Use my cross products. I get 13 equals y times the cosine of 35. If I divide by the cosine of 35, I get y is equal to 13 divided by cosine of 35. So y in this case is going to be 15.87. Again, let's just do a little check. The hypotenuse in this case is the longest side, which it should be, so my answer checks out. Okay, we're going to do one more together, and then you're going to do... Here's the next one that we're going to do. In this case, we have to find angles and not sides. So I'm going to write SOHCAHTOA again. I'm going to start by finding x. Now, 5 in relation to the x is opposite. 12 is the hypotenuse. O and H means I'm going to use sine. Okay, here's what's different. Remember that you always take sine, cosine, and tangent of an angle. So in this case, I'm taking the sine of x. That's equal to my opposite, which is 5, divided by my hypotenuse, which is 12. Okay, now remember that sine and x are in a very happy relationship, a very happy marriage. You can't just, break one up. You can't just break them up. They have to go through the legal divorce proceedings. So in order to break up sine and x, you have to take the inverse on both sides. So I have the inverse sine of x on the left side. And on the right side, I have the inverse sine of 5 over 12. Now, inverse sine and sine are going to cancel. So I have x equals the inverse sine of 5 over 12. Now, I can do this in my calculator. To get that sine to the -1, the inverse sine, you hit second sine. So I'm going to do second sine of 5 divided by 12 and hit enter. I get x to be 24.62 degrees. Now remember, to find y, I just subtract from 90. Because I have a 90-degree angle, and every triangle is 180, x plus y is going to equal 90. So in this case, I have 24.62, add y equals 90, so y is equal to 90, subtract 24.62. So I get y to be 65.38 degrees. So just as a reminder, you use the inverse when you're solving for angles. Okay, here are the two examples that I would like you to do on your own. This will be done on a separate sheet of paper, so if you could get out a separate sheet of paper and complete both examples 4 and 5, you'll be turning this in tomorrow. I am going to change, though, example 4 on you. Okay, so, example 5. I changed example 5, sorry. So on a separate sheet of paper, do both examples. If you don't know what to do, look back earlier in the video. On one example, you're going to have to use inverse trig. So again, separate sheet of paper, make sure you complete both examples, and we will go over it tomorrow. See you tomorrow.